Talkin Tabletop. Joining me, as always, we have Danny.
Hey, how you doing? And joining me, as always, is Trevor.
Good morning. So we're going to change up the format a little bit. If you've seen any of our top 5 videos before, we're going to do things a little bit differently this time. To start out with, we want to talk about what we've been playing lately. Hey Dan, what you playing?
So lately I've been playing a new game by Fantasy Flight Games and Richard Garfield called Keyforge. It's a unique deck game. Everybody who's heard anything about it understands what the unique deck thing is. But yeah, I've been really enjoying with it. I like how the goal is not to bring your opponent down to 0. It's just simply to build the keys, and there's a lot of cool ways to do it. And the fact that it fixes the mana problems of Magic, in my opinion, where you just declare the house, play the cards, or only interact with those cards. I think that's a phenomenal improvement on that style of game, which is what we'll be talking about later. So what you been playing?
I've been playing Ashes: Rise of the Phoenixborn. So if you know me, I love some Ashes. Yeah. I don't need an excuse to talk about it. If you've heard me talk about it, I've gone into great detail. It's got dice, who doesn't love dice? It's got cards, who doesn't love cards? It's got amazing artwork, who doesn't love amazing artwork? But they've recently added a couple of new decks and added some new mechanisms. Hey, he's learning. Clever girl. With mounts now. So now you have your characters, your allies, things like that, can all be mounted onto some type of riding creature, like a dinosaur or a horse or something like that. And if they're ever knocked out, you get your previous creature back. So kind of interesting. It adds a whole new layer of depth to it. So check out the new Ashes stuff. That said, that's what we've been playing. What have you been playing? Make sure and let us know in the comments below. But now we're going to get into a brand new segment we like to call I'm Game. So this is where we like to debate over certain topics that are meaningful to the board game community. This week we're going to get into something that a lot of gamers have used as a dirty word. Some think it's an okay term, and that is magic butts. Not to be confused with like Dumbledore's hindquarters, but more a game that is like Magic the Gathering, but X, Y, Z. So I'm going to be taking the pro side of the things good about magic butts. Danny will be taking the con side. So to start out, the good thing about magic butts is, to me, they're pretty easy to learn, because if you've ever played a game like Magic the Gathering, many of them are very similar in their basic mechanisms. You kind of know what you're getting into from the onset, with a few key differences here and there. So maybe it's dice as mana, or maybe it uses a different mechanic altogether, like Keyforge does.
Like sticky damage, or
things like that. Like creatures might maintain damage from turn to turn, the sticky damage. Or maybe it could be more of a I do one thing, you do one thing, versus I can do all that I can or want to, and then you do all that you can or want to. So there's little variations, subtle things here and there, but if you've ever played a competitive card game like that, then you kind of know what you're in for from the onset, versus games that can be vastly different, can take a long time to teach to people. I think having a kind of unified idea of it's pretty straightforward, I have this much health, you have that much health, we battle until last person standing, or until whomever achieves the victory goal.
That makes sense. Well, the reason I don't generally like magic butts is it's actually when I introduced you to Ashes for the very first time, I remember saying, like, hey, have you seen this game? No? Well, it's like Magic, but, and I caught myself saying it. And the problem is, the very first thing whenever anybody says anything, and they introduce it as, it's like Magic, but I'm already turned off. Because if I want to play a game that's like Magic, I'll probably play Magic. Now, I can understand people not being part of it anymore, like, because whether it's the community, whether it's, you can basically buy a deck that if you spend more money, you might have an advantage. Or even if it's just along the lines of, well, there's problems with like the actual function and the mechanisms in the game, like you might get mana screwed or flooded. there's a lot of problems with it fundamentally. As soon as somebody says it's like Magic, it's like, well, I've already had my time playing Magic, and I know there's games that are like it. That tells me it's probably a collectible card game, it's probably a two-player battling game, and if I'm going to play one game that is like Magic, it's going to be Magic. It's unfortunate, but that's true. So, first off, don't ever introduce it. It's like Magic, but that'll keep it from continuing this. But as a whole, what if I'm going to critique it? What's better about your game than Magic? That's a hard line to cross. So, what do you think?
So for me, I think It's Like Magic But has some key distinctions, we'll say. Because generally, if the very next sentence is, it's like Magic But it's cheaper to play, that right there is a huge selling point, because if you've ever played Magic the Gathering and you're trying to play in the standard format, it can get very expensive, as every 3 to 4 months there's a new set release. You have to buy a whole bunch of new cards in order to stay competitive. A lot of these games now scratch that itch, but they're not collectible. So we're seeing that a lot more prevalent in these Magic Buds. Things like Ashes, where everyone has access to the same card pool. Games that used to be collectible, like Dice Masters from WizKids, was a collectible game that now has become non-collectible, so you don't have to worry about the deepest pockets win. Right. Which I think is really good, that you can have a game that can be competitive, but it's not due to the competitiveness of your bank account. It's the competitiveness of your strategy itself. So for me, I think that Magic Butt isn't always necessarily a term that you throw the baby out with the bathwater, because maybe it takes that thing that you like and improves upon it to a point where it makes it that much more of a better experience for the player. Yeah. And cheaper.
And cheaper. Yeah, and it's unfortunate, but when somebody says trading card game, I automatically think, well, how's it like Magic? Because that's similar. But you're right, that's an unfair comparison. Like the Tomb Raider collectible card game, which probably maybe one of you have ever played. I'm the other one.
I happen to know 2 people that have played that game.
Yeah, it's a fantastic game, and it's nothing like Magic. I mean, it's a dungeon crawl card game, which is very strange, very different, and it's a fun game. I can see why it's no longer in publication anymore, but it's certainly not a Magic But then at the same time, when somebody introduces a game like oh, it's like Magic But, I'm automatically thinking that they are an ex-Magic player, and they thought, well, I was fed up with all of these problems that I had with Magic, like paying too much money to be part of it, having the community, having a problem with like the resources, and they thought, how can I improve it, instead of actually making a new game? And that was the fundamental problem I had with it. I mean, I'm going to go back to Ashes. I think Ashes is a fantastic game. But I see where it was taken from hey, I'm going to play Magic, but how can I improve all these? Instead of, how can I make a new game that's based around this universe? That's kind of how I saw it. So generally speaking, when somebody says, it's like Magic, but I'm probably going to turn off at that point, because I see it's like, well, how did you improve it? Well, okay, that's what's different about it. What makes it a unique game and not Magic, except a couple rules changes?
Yeah.
So.
The other thing that we're seeing now is you're seeing vastly different games coming out that do something completely new. So another example would be the game Warhammer Underworld. Shadespire and Nightbolt are the 2 current seasons. And it takes that kind of pre-built deck idea that a Magic has, with a lot of similar types of mechanisms of you're able to do this, you're able to do that through these ploy cards. But it puts it into a miniatures combat game. So it takes this kind of superficial idea of a card deck versus a card deck and flips it on its head, because now where you are on the board, what team you're using, what goals you have for victory and things can be vastly different. And you might even have a almost similar deck as your opponent. You could be fighting the same army and have everything be the exact same mirror, but your placement on the board, what you're trying to do, where you go on each turn, what characters you activate or don't, can drastically change the course of the game. So I think that having Magic Butt is good because we're seeing it in even more games. We're seeing it develop into kind of a infectionary style or an intro type, where you can find someone who's played this type of game and show them something completely out of left field. So I think it's really cool that we're seeing Magic kind of, it's been around for over 25 years now, and now it's kind of worked its way into other game types, other game companies and things.
Yeah, but I can also see it being a problem. You use a good example with the Warhammer game, but I'm going to use another example like Epic, the card game by White Wizard. That is essentially a Magic Butt, and I remember it used to be a collectible card game. They had a really unique mechanism where you could buy 2 booster packs, shuffle them together, that's your deck. And it works essentially the same way. And then now they've gotten out of the collectible things. And while it's a fine game, I do enjoy it, I can see why that is not as successful as their other games like Star Realms and Hero Realms, because that is a whole new different mechanism. So with that, we're going to close out, I think. I think we've hit some good points. And we would like you to get in on the discussion. So whatever medium you're watching this, YouTube, Facebook, make a comment down below. We want to hear your guys' inputs, and we want to know what is your thought on, generally speaking, the Magic Butts of the community.
So make sure that you smash that subscribe button to pieces, ring that bell off its hinges so that you can get all the updates for when we do more Talkin Tabletop, when we talk more about the things that we're game to discuss. And let us know in those comments what games you think maybe reinvented the wheel, or maybe took that wheel and put it in a different place in the vehicle. But until the next episode, I've been Trevor.
I've been Danny.
And we will see you when it's time to talk tabletop.
Get nerdy with me. Tell me what game that you get on. Is it card or read? What kind of class do you play, girl? In an RPG?